Hey guys, Mike Healy here with another cloud investing podcast for you. I am so excited for today's guest. We are going to actually have Catherine Ann Clayton on here, who's been an entrepreneur for quite a few years. Fascinating story at the beginning of her life when she started out as a teacher, then got into corporate America, became one of the top salespeople in a very large organization, and then just had all kinds of things go through her head that she understood that this is somewhere she needed to move to as being an entrepreneur. She's been coaching people for many, many years. Catherine, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, fantastic. Looking forward to the interview here. Obviously, today's interview, we typically primarily talk about the data centers, the opportunity we found to invest in data center units with the kind of fractional ownership of these things. That's why we're doing this. But Catherine, before we jump on here and kind of go into that, um, let's tell us a little bit about yourself as far as where you were in your life, probably right about the sales area, and then how you decided to be an entrepreneur. And I've mentioned this in a few of the podcasts about Robert Kiyosaki talking about the four quadrants, the ESBNI, employed, self-employed, business owner, and investor. And you've done this. You already own multiple businesses, and now you are really fascinated. And we'll talk about that obviously in detail about the investor side with the data center. So, say hi and introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit more about yourself, Catherine Ann.
Well, I'm Catherine Ann Clayton. I go by Catherine Ann, East Texas girl. Anyway, I did the whole thing about growing up. I went to college, did what you're supposed to do, became a teacher, was a teacher for 21 years. And then I just kind of got tired of it, got tired of the politics. So I moved into corporate America. I worked for a Fortune 500 company, went into sales there and was there for 8 years. And the last 4 years of that business, I was the number one salesperson. Now, what happened, which might happen to a lot of you, is I got called into my boss's office and they said to me, and I'm going to quote this, they said, "You're making too much money. We're going to cut your commissions." So I didn't really know what it means because they do a whole big thing on numbers. Anyway, I got home and it was a 90% cut. At that point, I looked at my husband and said, "You know what? It's time for me to leave. I've been wanting to be more of a present mom and a present wife." And so he goes, "I got you." I walked out and I started on this entrepreneur journey. I dove right into online digital marketing, didn't know what I was doing, and ended up, being a business and transformational leadership coach. And about 9 months ago, I jumped into a company that I loved, and then some things happened. And about 4 months ago, I jumped back into the company, and because I saw the vision of these data centers. Now, I saw the vision, and I'm going to be honest with you. I saw the vision, and my husband does the work. And I told him, "You know what? I'm going to invest in this." And I said, "But would you just listen?" And so when he listened, he looked at me and he goes, "Catherine Ann, we're buying two of this hardware packs, servers, data centers, because this is where the world is going." And that started our journey.
Perfect, perfect. So I'll bring some people up if you're a new listener to the channel. The data centers is what we're talking about. Is we actually found a way. There's a company that is kind of decentralizing it, meaning that more people can get involved. We're kind of labeling it as fractionalized ownership of data centers because data centers are some of the fastest growing things on the planet right now. Most of the big commercial real estate investors are now converting their properties into holding and building, allowing building of data centers on them because the demand, exponential growth of AI, everything's just growing in quantum leaps is insane. Most of us, though, Catherine, you're probably the same boat. We don't have billions of dollars to buy full size data centers. But what these guys have figured out how to do is collectively, we can go in and we actually have the ability to earn or purchase units within those kind of stacks. Like if you saw a tower of those data centers, I was explaining this to somebody this morning. It's kind of like they call them nodes officially, but it'd be like a bunch of PS3s stacked on top of each
Right.
other if you want to picture it that way. Nintendo game. However, what we're seeing though is what happens is as companies push their data out there, they need storage, they need cloud storage, and they pay us rent. So the reason Catherine said I got a handful of units and I'm going to get more is because they're going to pay her rent, meaning in royalties or whatever the label you want to call it, every single month as data is being stored on her unit. Now, you've heard of passive incomes, Catherine. When have you ever heard of something as good as this type of passive income?
Honestly, I haven't heard anything as good. I look at it as it's either a one-time investment, or you can, buy in fractional ownership and make payments on your server. But we're going to be paid for, the minimum 3 to 5 years. So what if you created an investment that you got residual income every month on a certain day, and you got paid on this? And we're talking, let's just say on a low end, $1,000. What would that do for somebody's life to just automatically, on, let's say, the 10th of the month, you get $1,000? Just kind of like what we used to call mailbox money. What would that do for your life? I know that $500 can change somebody's life a month. And with inflation, we need that extra income to come in, just to buy groceries. I mean, I went to the grocery store the other day. It was ridiculous, the little amount of groceries that I bought, and I spent $300. So this is, I believe, going to change the everyday person's life if they choose to jump in.
100%, couldn't agree more. The and I know you've probably read Robert Kiyosaki's books,
Hmm.
right? The Rich Dad Poor Dad and stuff. Rich Dad Poor Dad was based on the mindset of, what the rich do, what the poor do. And then the second book, which I just mentioned a little bit ago, was the cash flow quadrant. But what really stuck out to me is I remember studying this years and years ago when I first started my entrepreneurial journey, probably 30 years ago, that he was talking about having assets, which I didn't really understand because I was never taught that. It wasn't something that happened in school. And he was talking about, instead of going out and spending $100,000 on a Porsche, he would take $100,000 and he was buying physical storage units, like the kind where you put your old
Right.
furniture in, and he would have that, and then the renters of those storage units paid for his Porsche. Well, you fast forward 30 years and this day and age of technology, what are we doing here, Catherine? What are
Yeah,
we doing?
it is quite amazing. And I personally believe that the income that we're going to create from this is going to really elevate, something different besides stocks. I mean, a lot of people get into 401ks and they get into stocks, and you're happy if you make 6% a year. I believe that we're going to elevate that to a different level. I don't have a number for you, but I know what is out there in the data centers. I know what they're creating. I've had several friends that have called me, or like, oh my gosh, I have friends in Virginia, Washington D.C., and all those things. They're like, they just created another data center. What are you doing now? Because they're building more data centers. Everywhere you turn, they're building data centers. And what I tell people is, why are we, as just a normal mom, wife, just a normal person, why am I allowing Amazon and Google and Facebook and all these companies, AWS, to get all of that money? If we just had just a tiny piece of that, it could definitely make us wealthy.
Now, everything is dependent. The income that we get is dependent on data being stored on our units, right?
Absolutely.
Now, what's cool though is, because I had a guy, I'm actually interviewing him in a couple days, and I'll have that live later. This guy is actually a manager for a massive utility company of data centers. Like, that's what his job is.
Hmm.
And I asked him this question because I had talked to him, and he actually has already bought units himself. But I asked him that specific question. I said, "Do you believe there's enough data out there to fill all these centers?" Because I've mentioned this on multiple podcasts now, that the church I go to, that entire 3 mile strip used to be cornfields. It's now loaded with data centers.
Right.
Like, there's billions and billions of dollars on this 3 mile stretch. It's on the news. I see it on TV. I literally live right up the street from it. And he laughed. He said they can't keep up with building them fast enough for the demand of the because of the release of AI. And all these companies have to have their data stored. It's like they used to store this information on paper, and you had metal filing cabinets that then people rented storage units to put those metal filing cabinets in. He says that companies, which you just mentioned, Amazon and stuff like that, they can't keep up with it enough that when their centers are actually getting full, they are actually going to other companies that already have active units, data center units that are not full, and pushing data onto their servers themselves. I mean, could you imagine hypothetically if you found out that Amazon was pushing their data onto your server? I mean, I'm not saying that's
Right.
happened, but or will happen, but I'm just saying that's where we're at. I mean, and we're not financial advisors. None of this is financial advice. We're just throwing out and having a conversation about what we're doing. Catherine, how excited are you about this?
Well, I'm excited. And I want people to know because, we talk about data and people out there are just like, I don't really know what that means. But how many of y'all have one of these? It's a phone. There is so much data on this phone that stays up in the cloud. That's basically what we're doing. We are being the servers for that, and somebody's got to pay for it. So it's very interesting that we are, I believe, right before this is about to start to blow up. And the great thing about this is it's decentralized, therefore nobody can control what goes on it. So I mean, they're going to control what goes on it, but they're not going to decide. I know that a couple of weeks ago I was sending out a link on a certain platform, and every time I sent the link out, they were shutting it down. And I was sending out the link and trying to get people to join this meeting, and the company just kept shutting it down. We're not going to be able to do that because it's decentralized. So I am excited for this. I think everybody in some form or fashion, whether it's fractional ownership or a lease to own or buying it outright, should jump into this opportunity.
Okay, Catherine Ann, we're going to switch gears. Hypothetically, we're a year into this thing. What are you going to, how good is it going to feel? And like, can you imagine how your life will change if you've got 1,000, 2,000, $5,000 a month coming in passively that you just know is coming because data is going to keep going? How good is that going to feel?
Well, it's going to feel very good. And, my husband, who he doesn't do anything with me, the business, he's like, it's going to be great to be on the golf course. He loves golf. And, you know, I do know of the opportunities that I am going to be able to provide for my family, my kids, my children, and to allow us to just have the freedom that we want. And we've set up some goals. My husband and I have set up some goals of what we're going to do, what we're going to pay off, what we're going to do with all this money. And one thing that we have chosen to do is as the money is generated, we are compounding the money that we're making to buy more machines. So let's just say, hypothetically, you own 5 of these machines and they're paying $1,000 a month. Well, 5 times 1,000 is $5,000 a month. I personally believe it's going to be a little bit more than that. So just do the numbers and decide what you can do, and you can, compound that. And when you start making the money, then in 6 months you buy another machine, then you make more money. So that's what I love about this model. Data is not going away. It is here to stay. And we get to jump on the bandwagon, if you're interested in creating some residual income.
And I think with the timing is very important. Like the window can't close down the road. Like it can get to the point where they up the cost of these things, where it's just, you're not going to come in for a low dollar amount. Like we can get units right now for about $15,000. There are going to be other units that'll probably come out that'll be having more capacity that will pay out more, income based on the data storage, things like that, with gaming companies coming on board to
Right.
get their storage units. Because these companies are all, the thing is All companies are moving towards AI first, like 80% of them. Almost every company that I've studied now, because I was studying all this as I was learning it, have increased their budgets by 80% AI forward,
Right.
AI forward, the way they're going, because they know that's where it's at, which is massive data. And
Mhm.
we're literally out there collecting it. It's like we've got fishing nets out there that are people are being, put it on there. I mean, what people don't understand is um, a data center unit for what we have right now, the capacity can get filled pretty quick. I mean, the numbers, Catherine, you threw out of $1,000 a month is only at one of our units basically being, 20% at capacity, like
Right.
holding it. I mean, it's like it can go up, obviously, or it can stay at that level. It doesn't matter. To me, it's just like, and you probably would agree, is I'm also looking for other ways to protect and diversify my money,
Hmm.
because things in the real world right now are chaotic, to say the least. I mean, I laugh when I go to the grocery store. You mentioned this earlier. Like, I literally have one of those small push carts, not the big cart,
Right.
the small one, not full, and it's like $90. And
Hmm.
I'm like, I have like 5 items.
Right.
Like, I'm like, how is that possible? And that's the thing, is if people don't take personal responsibility of stop putting your money under a mattress, definitely don't just let it sit in the bank so they can loan it out 10 times over. Do something with it. Get aggressive with, you got to make aggressive moves in today's day and age, or you're going to get wiped out. A last thing I'll say on this point, I just saw a post come through on one of the news things that's on my Facebook feed about the income, what kind of income it takes to stay in the middle class, state by state, and to be in the middle class in Ohio, where I live. It was like $175,000 to be considered middle class.
Hmm.
I'm like, oh my gosh, like how do I mean, I don't even know how people,
Well,
like,
and
it's
from
out of
yeah,
control.
from
Go ahead.
2 years, speaking on that, from 2 years ago, at the end of COVID, you to today, you have to make 14% more in your salary to live the same lifestyle you lived at 2022 at the end of the pandemic. And I don't know about you, but in corporate America and all these other jobs, I don't see people, in January going, congratulations, you got 14% of a raise. No, you get like 1%, 2%. It's kind of really, really sad. And I believe that income producing assets, which is what this is going to change the trajectory of your family and your family, dialogue, wealth, and all that.
Perfect. Well, Catherine, we are about, I know you've got an appointment coming up. We talked about that a little bit ago.
Uh-huh.
I'd let you go on here. But thank you so much for being on here today. It was fantastic. You did a great job.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
I expected nonetheless. So stay right there, okay? Let me go solo real quick. All right. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in again. Make sure that if you're looking for more information, you can always get a hold of Catherine Ann or myself about the data centers, or anybody that maybe shared one of these podcast videos, wherever you happen to see this on here. And we'll just get you some information. You can take a look at it. But again, thanks for being on the Cloud Investing Podcast. We'll see you on the next one.